This woman claimed a human face spontaneously appeared on her. What they found underneath will give you nightmares.
In 1971, Maria Camara claimed a weird face had formed on her concrete kitchen floor. Even more terrifying than that, she said the faces would move and change expression. Over the years, Maria tried frantically to get the faces removed. She would scrub the floors, and even at one point she poured concrete over the floor. But the face would come back each time, becoming more prominent. Scientists and historians started to look into the phenomenon. It turns out in the 17th century, the governor of the region had lived in that house. And one night while living there, he went mad and murdered his whole family. When Maria heard this, she knew it was time to dig up that floor. What she found underneath left her speechless. For more 7 Sins Crime, remember to hit the plus.
Calling all true crime fans, let's discuss the murder of Hae-Min Lee and the potential innocence of Adnan Syed, the man behind bars for her murder. I'm going to be doing a pretty big series on this one, because 1, there's a lot of information, and 2, I have a lot of opinions. This is Hae-Min Lee. She was a Korean-American student at Woodlawn High School in Baltimore, Maryland. She was in the magnet program, and she was also an athlete. January 13th, 1999, Hae-Min Lee was reported missing by her family after failing to pick up her younger cousin from elementary school. People did see her leaving the high school, so they weren't sure where she went after that. Baltimore police started working immediately trying to figure out where she went. To get more information, they made a few calls, one of them being to her ex-boyfriend Adnan Syed, who said he saw her around lunch period, but that was it. They also called her current boyfriend Don, who said he hadn't seen her at all that day. Dogs walked along the property to see if they could pick up a scent. It wasn't until February 9th, 1999, that a passerby would find a shallow grave at Lincoln Park. On February 9th, 1999, Alonzo Sellers called police. He stopped by Lincoln Park to take a quick pee break when he discovered a very shallow grave and potentially a body in the park. Investigators soon discovered that this was missing Hae-Min Lee. In further parts, I'm going to go more into detail about her body. Police immediately declared this a homicide and got to work right away. Only a few days later, February 12th, 1999, police received an anonymous phone call saying that they should look into the ex-boyfriend, Adnan Syed. We aren't entirely sure who made this call. However, the couple did date most of 1998. They kept it kind of a secret though because of their religious backgrounds, but they did break up later in the year, and that's when Hae-Min Lee started dating Don. February 16th, 1999, police obtained cell phone records of the phone that belonged to Adnan Syed. February 28th, Adnan was arrested and charged with first-degree murder of Hae-Min Lee. Why were they so quick to arrest Adnan? Police were relying heavily on the testament his best friend gave. So I do stand corrected. In my last video, I said that this was Adnan's best friend, but people were saying in the comments that they were just kind of acquaintances who would smoke weed together occasionally. This is Jay Wilds, and he became the state's primary witness. So this is something I'll kind of discuss later, but I printed this out because it contained Jay's original testimony. This is the Court of Special Appeals of Maryland, Adnan Syed versus the State of Maryland, March 19th, 2003. So this is later down the road. I'll mention more of this later. But, according to Jay, he called Adnan Syed in the morning of January 13th, saying that he needed to buy a present for his girlfriend, so they went to the mall together. Then eventually the two went back to school, where allegedly they had a conversation about Hae-Min Lee, and Adnan said it wasn't going well. Kinda confused by this because I thought that they had broken up by this point. According to Jay, Hae-Min Lee told Adnan that she was making him mad, and Adnan apparently said, "I'm going to kill that bitch." And apparently after this, Adnan let Jay borrow his phone, his car. When they met up later, Adnan asked if he was ready to do this.
Today we're going to talk about the disappearance of Brianna Maitland. She was a 17-year-old girl who disappeared from Montgomery, Vermont. I can't speak. In February of 2004, Brianna decided that she wanted to move out of her home. She had dropped out of high school due to unstable housing and moved in with a friend. She then began taking high school equivalency courses in order to get her GED. She also attended this one party where she got into a fight with Kaylee Lacrosse. Kaylee had given Brianna a broken nose and a concussion. Brianna's parents pressed charges against Kaylee, but they were later dropped after her disappearance. Now, the day before her disappearance, she had went out with her mother to the mall. Brianna was telling her mom that she had just passed her GED test and she was planning on going to college. While shopping, something outside of the store caught her eye. It is unclear what it was that she went out of the store to see or look at or talk to, but she later met her mom in the parking lot after that incident. Part 2 is already Now, once her mom met her in the parking lot, they both got in the car and started driving. Brianna's mom claims that she was acting kind of weird, she seemed agitated, but she didn't pay any mind to it and dropped her off at her apartment. At 3:30 p.m., Brianna would then leave for work. She left a note to her roommate stating that she would be home right after work. This is March 19th of 2020, by the way. Brianna clocked out at 11:20 p.m. Her coworkers invited her out, but she said that she needed to get home and sleep, so she didn't go anywhere except to her apartment. But that would be the last time that Brianna was ever seen. On March 20th, which would be the next day, her car was found abandoned. The car was found backed into this barn. It contained all of her belongings, including $150 uncashed checks, her medications, her makeup, her jewelry. However, Brianna wasn't filed as a missing persons until March 23rd. Now, this is because the roommate had left home for the weekend. Part 3 is already up. When the roommate returned to the apartment, she noticed that the note was still untouched. However, she assumed that Brianna had just went home with her parents. On the 23rd of March, however, when she still hadn't heard from Brianna, she called Brianna's mom, and that is when they filed the missing persons report. Let's talk theories. Initially, police officers thought that it was a runaway case. However, she left money in her car. Just an odd way to leave if she had plans for her future. But it was a known fact that she was unhappy in her rural town and had ran away before. Police department received an anonymous tip stating that Brianna was alive and being held captive in a house in Berkshire, Vermont, by two drug dealers, Raymond Ryans and Nathaniel Jackson. The police officers decided that this was foul play and not a runaway case. Now, these two men were drug dealers, and it actually came out that Brianna was involved in drugs, specifically cocaine, and she actually knew these two men. So the next theory revolves around it being a drug-related crime. Part 4 is up. Now, when it comes to it being drug-related, Brianna had actually picked up a second job, so maybe the theory is that she owed money to one of these men and she was either being followed, stalked, and that is why she picked up a second job in order to pay these men off. This could explain why she was shaken and agitated at the mall and why she stepped out. Maybe she saw them following her and she was really upset. Police officers also received a letter that stated that the two drug dealers did it, with gruesome details saying that Brianna was dismembered and then scattered in the pig farm. The last theory being that Kaylee did it. This is the girl that she got in a fight with. Now, no one really knows what the argument was about, but there are some theories that Kaylee was sleeping with Brianna's ex-boyfriend. Brianna's ex-boyfriend had also come forward as a witness saying that he had saw the car but nobody was in it. So the theory is that maybe he came forward as a witness because he knew what actually happened and was trying to cover it up. Kaylee was questioned, nothing came from it though. Also, theories that they had seen her in a casino. Pictures were too blurry to tell. Others thought this was connected to the Mara Murray case.
This is Macintrony, who terrorised the Isle of Lewis, Scotland. Part 1. There's been a murder. According to folklore, Macintrony was from Garve in Rossshire and was extremely psychologically ill. One night, his sister was having a sleepover with her friend, who happened to be wearing a rather eye-catching necklace, which Macintrony decided he wanted. When the two girls were in bed, his sister borrowed her friend's necklace for the night. Later, he snuck into their room and killed his sister's friend to get the necklace. Unfortunately though, he had actually murdered his own sister. For this, Mac was outlawed and ended up scavenging around Lewis's moorlands. You can watch parts 2 and 3 now by either swiping left or clicking on this sound. This is Macintrony, who terrorised the Isle of Lewis, Scotland. Part 2, The Boy Out the Loch. Often seen on the moors of Uig, he would survive by stealing cows and sheep. One day, a girl was looking for a missing calf near the cave. She saw someone running towards her from the cave shouting, "If I was closer, you wouldn't be smiling." It was Macintrony. She turned her back on him and began to shout for her companions. Turns out she wasn't shouting to anyone. Pretending there were scared him off though. Other stories say he killed a boy on the run in Uig. The young boy was sitting by a loch in the moor when Mac struck. Knowing what was happening, the boy asked if he could finish eating before it was his time. Macintrony then drowned the boy, but later said, "I wouldn't change anything I've done, but I wish I'd let that boy live. The look on his face as I killed him has been haunting me ever since." You can watch parts 1 and 3 now by either swiping left or clicking on this sound. This is Mac and Trony, who terrorised the Isle of Lewis, Scotland. Part 3, Mac's Demise. One night, during dinner, a young couple with a son heard a knock at their door. Answering, they found Mac and Trony, who wanted somewhere to stay. They gave him food and bed for the night. When Mac was getting changed, the son spotted a concealed knife, and subsequently the couple decided to stay awake all night, just in case. The following day, Mac asked the boy if he would walk with him and show him the way to Tulsa. Refusing, Mac and Trony told the boy, "You are very lucky, because if I had got you behind that hill, you would have never seen your mother or father again." Mac was eventually caught and sentenced to hang for the murders of 19 people. His last request was for a jug of water, where he drank his fill and dropped the jug down on the head of the clerk, killing him instantly. Now I've killed 20. You can watch parts 1 and 2 now by either swiping left or clicking on this sound. On the 30th of January 1886, 59-year-old Betty Moat from Shetland, Scotland, had planned to travel from the southern tip of the island to the capital to sell her knitted wares. She took a bottle of milk and 2 biscuits for the journey and headed off. Betty was the only passenger on the Columbine, the ship that would get her there. Tragedy struck when the Columbine hit heavy seas, throwing the captain overboard. When the crew tried to save him, they too ended up in the water. Betty, hiding below deck, didn't know any of this until she made her way above. She was alone on the Columbine, drifting away from the Shetland Islands. For 9 days, Betty drifted alone across the North Sea, beaten by storms with only her milk and biscuits to survive on. Somehow, the Columbine grounded itself on a beach in Norway. Betty's journey should have taken less than 3 hours. Her story inspired headlines in newspapers around the world. Even Queen Victoria was so touched by her story, she requested a cheque of £20 be sent to Betty. After a warm welcome back in Shetland, Betty returned to Sundberg, where she lived until the age of 93.
Back in 2001, someone's just going for a stroll when they see a body floating in the Thames. It's the corpse of a 4 to 7-year-old boy, and the limbs and head have been cut off, and I quote, expertly. Also, what's incredibly unnatural about this, other than the fact that it's, just a torso, is the fact that there isn't a single drop of blood left in the body. The forensic team was able to determine that this John Doe, or Adam as they call him, had been poisoned and paralyzed before his death. And inside of his intestines, they found a strange concoction of plant extracts, which they were able to trace back to West Africa, specifically Nigeria. Adam was wearing these bright orange shorts, which could only be purchased in either Germany or Austria. Now, the theory is that Adam had been trafficked from Nigeria to either Austria or Germany before finally ending up in the UK, where he was used in some sort of occult ritual. Attics are scary, right? But now imagine going into an attic and finding 300 coffins. Early on, after New Orleans' founding, hundreds of women were sent from France. They were incredibly pale and would burn after only seconds in the sun. Stranger still, each of them carried a coffin-shaped box. Before they were, settled down, found husbands, they stayed at the Ursine convent. Now one day, the nuns are tidying in the attic and they notice all of the coffins are empty. That night, they return and they nail each coffin closed. No one enters that floor in over a century. Until 1978, when the 2 paranormal investigators sneak onto the property. Their decapitated body is found the next day, savagely torn apart. What makes it even worse is the door and all of the chests have been broken wide open. Whatever was in those 300 coffins has gotten out. And it looks like they might be hungry. I'm not going to New Orleans, probably ever now.